Okay, so it says we're live. We'll see if anybody's here. Hi, everybody. It's Jen. I'm here again with you with another amazing guest. Today I have Nicole with me, and she is with Guiding Echoes. And I ran across Nicole about a year and a half ago, I think. And then we've kind of missed each other here and there because so many things, you guys know, 2020 was just whatever.
Wait, what happened in 2020?
No, I don't know, nothing. Yeah, it was a pastime.
Don't even remember it.
Fun stuff. Yeah. I wanted to say SHIT show, but I'm like, I am trying really hard to stop saying that on lives.
There you go. It was a freak show.
There you go. We'll call it that. There you go. Because that's one of my favorite words. But anyhow, so I totally love Nicole. We've chit-chatted back and forth a little bit in like Messenger, but I always like to bring my guests on pretty, like it's a brand new conversation. Like I really don't know much about her yet. So I'm super, super excited about this. I love when my angels and guides bring me somebody else that kind of resonates. And I like to keep it really super authentic. So really, I'm kind of meeting her for the first time as well, which is super, super fun. So Nicole, thank you so much for coming on with me today. And we've got some ladies saying hi already. It says, hi, lovely ladies. Hi, guys. It's great to have you with us. So just do a really quick intro, and then I want to ask some questions because I'm so excited to ask you a few things.
Sure. I'm excited too. I'm excited to answer.
So give me a little like who you are and how people can find you, because I have a feeling this conversation is going to get exciting and we'll forget that part. So let's do that now.
Sure.
So and then I'll make sure that in the comments we've got it all.
There you go. Sounds perfect. So my name is Nicole Guillaume. I am a psychic medium. I'm also the owner of Guiding Echoes. Guiding Echoes is best known for its YouTube channel, and it's been picking up a lot of traction on Facebook too. So through my YouTube channel, I'm able to talk about some really interesting topics like what happens when we die, what happens in the afterlife. I also talk about mediumship development, psychic development, clairvoyance, all of those really intricate things. And, I've kind of made it my mission that this year I'm going to dive into mediumship even further. And one of my passions is teaching people how they can develop their psychic abilities, because I believe we all have intuition. We're all born with some type of psychic development. And the problem is that as we grow up, in our different households, our parents, God bless them, do the best that they can. And when we have a psychic experience, so many parents are quick to tell their children that was in your imagination, it wasn't true. And sometimes parents do this because they don't believe in the other side and they don't believe in ghosts. Or other times it could actually be because they're scared, like the parents actually do believe in this, but they're afraid of ghosts or whatnot. So these children grow up into adults who are kind of crippled when it comes to using their intuition, and they don't trust their own psychic development, and they don't trust their own abilities. And so my whole channel is a rehab for anyone who's been through that. That is my psychic rehab channel. I kind of like that. Maybe I'll rebrand it that way, but it's my psychic rehab channel. And so it's where people go. My hope is that it's where people go to gain answers to that and to find that psychic spark within them again, and that it'll just really ignite them so that fire can be unleashed, and in a really good positive way. Because I do believe that the closer we are to our intuition, the more we embrace and enhance our own psychic ability, the more authentic that we can show up, not just for ourselves, but for others as well. So I think intuition and mediumship and psychic development are so very important. And, part of my mission is just really helping people to embrace that part of themselves. So it's been a really fun and wild journey. And I know big things are still waiting to come. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
I love it. So it's so funny. It's so funny again. Like I always know when I'm going to really resonate with somebody, and like, it's almost, some of the things are almost exactly the same, only said differently, right? So I call it a God spark instead of the psychic spark. We use the same, like it's like ignite that fire. I say, let your light shine. So I love that so much that and I think so many people are waking up and talking about the psychic rehab, like, especially from my background being on the Christian side of this, like, if you don't have any reference for how to deal with these gifts, it's really it's so hard.
It is. Yeah.
So just out of curiosity, like, when did you first realize like that you were a medium and that's part of like who you were?
So I first realized I was a medium when I had started working with tarot cards. And so what happened was, I had decided to decorate my house for Halloween, which is something I had never done before. And I thought it would be really fun to create a seance scene in my front yard. So I started thinking about what I would need for a seance scene. I would need a table, I would need a crystal ball, I would need tarot cards. And so I went online to start searching for these things. And as I was looking at different tarot cards, there was one deck in particular that really caught my attention. But it was $30 and I was cheap and didn't want to spend $30 for it. So I put it on my wish list and continued looking. But none of them spoke to me the way that this particular deck did. And so after a couple days, I think it might have even been 3 days of, basically arguing with myself, like, I really want that deck. And you're not really going to spend $30 on that deck, are you? No, that's too expensive.
On a Halloween prop.
Yeah, exactly. On a Halloween prop.
Yeah.
And so, days went by. I think it was about 3 days. And finally, one night, like midnight, I think it was, I finally got up out of bed because I couldn't sleep. I was thinking about this deck, so I couldn't sleep. Finally got up out of bed, went and bought it, and totally forgot about it. So it arrives in the mail like 7 days later, and I'm like, what the heck did I order from Amazon? Because this was before, 1 to 3 day Prime. I'm like, what the heck? Open it up, and I was like, oh, it's my cards. And so as I took them out of the precious box and I started looking at the cards one by one, I'm like, these cards are way too pretty to use for decorations. And instantly I had these, visualizations or, my imagination going crazy. And I'm visualizing kids sneezing on them and they're like flying off in the wind.
Chocolate fingers.
Yeah, exactly. So I had this innate need to protect those cards almost with my life. And so when I was going through the cards, I actually had some friends near me and they're like, well, if you're not going to use them for decoration, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I'm going to learn how to read them. So I did. I bought some books. I signed up for an online course. And I also found a group of people that would practice tarot readings online. And it turned out that I had this really great knack for it. So I opened up like a little tarot business online, started a Twitter account, and started putting out little tarot facts and promoting my business. And I got people who had ordered tarot readings, but what was fascinating was that as I would have a client on the phone with me and I'm turning over cards, spirits started coming through. And at first I didn't quite understand what was going on. Yeah. And it was all in my mind. I mean, it's not like actual people were walking into the room. And, Hollywood fictionalizes mediumship so much. And for the longest time, I did actually think mediums saw people physically with their physical eyes.
And I do sometimes.
I do sometimes, yeah.
I've actually been,
not often.
I've had that happen where because I see so vividly. So I think everybody's different. But anyway, sorry, not to interrupt your story.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So they were coming through in my mind's eye, but how I knew it wasn't my imagination was the presence, like the feeling that came with it. And then some of them were just so detailed where I'm like, this is not my imagination. And other times, even if they were kind of blurry and I couldn't see them, again, it was just that feeling, like I could feel them in the room with me. And so I would start talking to my clients. I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt our own reading, but do you by any chance have a father on the other side or whoever it was? And they would be like, oh my gosh, yes. Then I would just start going into that reading instead. And then people were just blown away and amazed because they showed up for like a $15 tarot reading and ended up getting a psychic mediumship reading. So, bonus for them and fun for me because I had no idea I had these abilities. And so, prior to tarot and prior to this, I was someone who meditated often. I spoke to my angels. I was doing more work with them. And it never crossed my mind that mediumship was something I could do. So tarot was, in fact, sort of the gateway to that. But yeah, it was.
So I love that story because, and I feel like this is happening to a lot of people. I've always been this way. Like I literally don't remember a time that I didn't see spirit all around. Yeah. And I have the whole conundrum of being Christian. So for the longest time, I tried to shut it down thinking it was a curse instead of a gift. Now I understand that it's a gift, but it's really interesting how yours was almost like a spontaneous awakening, or what I would say is that it was probably in your soul chart. Or your soul thought that this is when you're going to wake up and this is the event that will help you wake up. So I think it can happen in so many different ways. Either your gifts just get turned on, or they slowly awaken, or maybe you're already born with it and you just don't know. I see a comment that says, I was shamed by the church for my gifts, and so she actually cut ties with the church. Interestingly enough, I actually I hid my gifts for so long because of thinking that it was bad. And again, I think it depends even on the church, because here's the thing, we're humans and we all know we can't agree on anything, right? Like everybody wants their way to be the right way, which is so
well,
brilliant.
mine is, just to save you trouble, mine is. No, I'm kidding.
I love you so much already. I'm like, how did it take me this long to meet you? Because I'm such a smart. Okay, so I have to get off topic here. The other day I told somebody, I can't remember what was posted, but you know how people say badassery, like what kind of, that was badassery or whatever. I'm like, okay, my new word is smartassery. That's my new word for the year. That's my word for this year.
You need to trademark that. I'll wait. Go ahead.
I still love that so much. So anyway, so it's so funny how many people like, okay, so just looking at church, and I know that you kind of have a little similar, like you've kind of gotten away from church as well. Is that correct? Yeah. And I think unfortunately what's happened is these gifts are so misunderstood, and the traditional churches that we know, like there are some churches who believe in prophetic gifts and who really preach that, there's churches that talk in tongues. Somebody has also mentioned that here, but they don't understand that, that if you don't have, like the church I grew up in, we didn't talk about these gifts. Like you went to church, you put your white little gloves on and you sat there and you behave and you be quiet during church. And that's kind of how we were raised. Now, same thing. I love church. I love everything about it. I've always seen Jesus and the angels. So for me, it was natural to kind of incorporate church into, or at least scripture, or at least biblical knowledge of some kind now. And I'm not saying that I'm a preacher. So I want to make that extremely clear. I'm not. I use it as a personal guide for myself, and I use it in the way that feels good to me. But there's so many clues in there that are not taught about these gifts. I'm looking at, there's so many comments, and I love this coming in. Angel dialect, which to me is light language. It's like, to me, that's the same thing. So it's really interesting. It's really interesting. Like I always tell people, like, don't be afraid of this gift, and don't waste time like I did of feeling like it's a curse, because I felt that for so long. So find a safe place, find people, which is part of the reason I'm so excited to have you on, because I want people to have a safe place to ask questions and find information. And again, you have to use discernment, right? Like I would never go into anything like this blind. And I would say use discernment and trust yourself. I have a funny story about, because I don't say that I'm a medium, but I've had mediumship experiences where spirits come in. But if you were to give somebody advice, before I get off on a tangent on this story, what would be your advice to somebody who's just kind of coming into their abilities?
Well, when you're just coming into your abilities, it can be both scary and confusing. And if you don't have anyone to talk to about it, that can make you feel so alone and so isolated. And if you're in a situation like I was, where you're in a relationship with someone who doesn't believe in any of this stuff, and maybe they're already abusive in different ways, whether it's verbally or physically, the first thing that you need to do is be sure that you're safe. Like Jennifer was just saying, it is perfectly safe to expand your intuition, but it's not always safe to share our feelings and our impressions with other people. So the very first piece of advice I would have is, first of all, know you're not crazy. Like, you're not crazy. You're seeing what you're seeing. You're hearing what you're hearing. You are having the experience that you believe you're having. So always trust your experience. You don't have to know where the voice is coming from. You don't have to know what it is you saw. Just validate to yourself, I saw someone. I heard this thing. Because when you're able to validate your own experience, that's very powerful, and you look for less validation in others. So just always trust your experience. And again, you don't have to know what it means. Don't dive it. Don't go down that wormhole yet. Just validate your own experience. The second thing I would say is start seeking out like-minded people. And that could even be that you buy a book that talks about the experiences that you're having, because even with that, you're going to feel like you made a friend. You're going to feel some form of consolidation. And if you can find an online community, or, when the world opens up again, an in-person community, again, where you feel safe, go with that and practice what you're feeling and find those other people. And also, like Jennifer was saying, she was saying use discernment, and I agree with that. But the other way to word that is, if you feel uncomfortable, listen to that too. And don't get yourself into one of those mind games where you're saying, well, maybe I'm just afraid because I've never been down this path before, or, I've never been in a healthy environment, so maybe that just feels weird to me. Your intuition, your higher self knows what's good for you. So if you do go into a community and even though the message sounds right, something feels off, pay attention to that, because you're going to end up just going down that rabbit hole, and you're either going to get brainwashed, which you're not going to like, and then you're going to be stupid. You're not going to know you're stupid because you're being brainwashed. And then, to put it bluntly, or you're going to get mixed up with the wrong people and you're going to end up profoundly hurt. So find a place where you do feel welcomed, where you do feel safe, and go from there. So those would be the two things that I would really stress: is stay safe, be responsible for who you share with, and find safe people you can share with.
Right. So I love that so much. That's the one of my biggest things. Like when I first started this, I don't even remember how many years ago it's been now. The community I created is called Embodied Grace Community. And I'm like, from the very beginning, I'm like, this is a safe place to ask any questions about all of the stuff. Like, and it's, for me, it's always whole everything, right? Like our physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and now galactic energies are coming in. And I really feel like, too, the one thing that I want to add to what you're saying is all of those things. The gut feeling to me is always a discernment. Like if something feels off, just don't even question it. Just trust yourself to know what's right for you and what isn't, right? And what's right for you may not be the same person. We're here for different experiences. So just because it's okay for your best friend doesn't mean that it's okay for you, right? You've got to trust yourself to know what's right. The other thing is too, I feel like a lot of the younger kids, this is something that I'm seeing a little bit more as we go, is that a lot of the little kids are totally waking, like they're just flat out, like they see everything already. They understand it all. So for those of you that have kids that see, like, it's okay to reach out and say, I don't know what the heck my kid's seeing, but it's really hard when the kids are seeing things, because I remember seeing things and I couldn't really say a whole lot, right? Like my parents understood it to a degree, and thank God my mom was open to it. Do you know what I mean? But like, if she would have kept telling me I was crazy, that would have been so detrimental. And I think that happens a lot, is they think, I don't see anything, there's nothing there. You know what I mean? When obviously I saw something there. And I know that happens sometimes, but I feel like that's something we need to get away from. Like, I really want to start making people understand, like, don't say there's nothing there, because I can guarantee you there are things there. Like, the spirit realm is all around us.
Right.
So I'm going to switch now and go to a funny story, because I don't want to get so heavy into this, but I don't do the mediumship stuff, right? But every once in a while, something will come in. And I remember this little lady, and she was so cute. She was this little Japanese lady. And I was actually getting a waxing service with, the gal that at the esthetician place. And I'm like, okay, I've only been to this person like twice. She's going to think I'm nuts. But her grandma is like adamant that I tell her that she's here, right? So I'm like, this is going to sound cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, but does your grandma look like this? And has she passed already? And she's like, oh my God, yes, I've been thinking about her. And I said, well, she's showing me this thing. And this is where I made the mistake, right? So this is where you just trust what comes through. She kept showing me this thing, and it was about this big, and it was on a chain. Well, in my mind, I'm like, that looks like an old-fashioned pocket watch, but I kept hearing there's a locket. So she was saying locket, and I'm going, I've never seen a locket that's that big around. That looks like a pocket watch to me. And I said, she's showing me this thing, and it looks like a pocket watch about this big. And I said, it's gold, and it looks like this. And she goes, I have a locket of hers. And I was like, I should have just listened to spirit. They told me it was a locket, but in my mind, I was trying to figure out what they were saying. And so that's another thing on like trusting yourself when spirit comes in. You may not understand why they're giving you something. You may not understand why you feel uncomfortable about going to this certain place or this certain event or whatever. Trust that gut instinct, because they always have your highest and best interest in mind, I believe.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a really good lesson for all developing mediums, which is you're going to have that struggle, and I don't know if it ever truly goes away because, spirit it's such a difficult communication process, and people don't really understand that because you are using pure consciousness, a form of telepathy, pure consciousness to speak to those beings on the other side, and they're playing charades with you. That's what's going on is they're playing charades. They're giving you words, they're giving you images, and you have to figure out on the spot what those mean. And so you actually, I think that you did a great job explaining, saying pocket watch, even though it was a locket. You did a great job because you were still working with your understanding, and it's still, the message still came across, and by you
Right.
not saying lock it or her saying lock it, it validated to you that you were hearing correctly.
Right.
So it was actually, there were a couple lessons in there for you as well. So it sounds to me like it was a great
It
read.
was fantastic. It was a great experience. And that's why I told her, I said, well, I just learned my lesson because she was telling me. And I've learned that over the years, if they give me a word or whatever, I don't even question it. I just say, what does this mean to you? Because whoever you're giving that message to, they are going to, the charades or whatever. I love how you call it that. Cause I know some of my friends that actually do mediumship. They're like, eventually you get like a pattern of this means this and this means this. And the more you work with it.
Right.
I want to look really quick over at the comments. So somebody's saying, it's also nice to hear that I'm not crazy. Yeah. So it's so funny because even to this day, I will tell my girlfriends, this sounds like batshit crazy, but this is and I'm like, I don't even know why I say that anymore because I know nothing is weird to me anymore. But we still have that. Okay, this is going to sound weird, but it's not when you start working with spirit. And I just really feel like people have to embrace it now. Do you feel that too? Like, do you feel that like it's just time to wake up to it for so many people?
Well, I think it's always been time to wake up to it. And so I do have a hard time when I scrolling through Facebook and they're like, now is the time to take responsibility for, or now is the time, or now is the time. I'm like, now has always been the time. Like 10 years ago when that was now, that was the time. And so I do think that the year 2020 came with some amazing hidden agendas spiritually, and some incredible opportunities for us as a human race, because with people being home now, they're around when their ghosts are acting up. And, all those people who have been forced to look at different career paths, they're looking at careers differently, not just as a means to pay their bills. Now they're stopping to ask, what's my sole purpose? Like, what am I here? What would I enjoy doing all day that would also provide monetary value so I can take care of me and my family? And so I do believe that people are waking up. I think that 2020 came with some very painful moments for a lot of people. And I think that through that pain, there's been some just magnificent opportunities that are being born. And so I think that what I believe when it comes to 2020 is I think that so many people were fed up with a lot of things in their lives. And I think that there's been this culmination of people saying, I wish I didn't have to work. I wish I could spend more time with my kids. I wish I could do this. I wish I could do this. Well, guess what? Wish granted, wish granted, wish granted. But it didn't come in the form that they wanted. And also the way it began, or the way it ends is the way it begins, which means when people are making those wishes, and I am a big believer in wishing and manifesting, when they made those wishes, I wish I didn't have to work. Well, they were saying that out of an energy of angst, of frustration. So when they manifested it, it came through in the energy of angst and frustration. And so now they're thinking, okay, well, this thing that I manifest, or a lot of people aren't even conscious that they manifested. And now they're like, okay, I'm out of a job, but I'm frustrated. And I wish I could go back to that job, So they got what they wanted, found out it wasn't what they wanted. And so now they're being faced with this question of, well, what do you want? What would make your soul happy? Because you weren't satisfied with the job. You weren't satisfied without one. You thought you wanted to spend more time with your kids, and you found out you hate homeschooling with a passion. So what are you going to do now? So there is definitely something happening, and we can't deny that. But I believe it's just gotten to the point where, like I said, it's always been time, but it's always been building like a volcano. It had to eventually explode. Yeah, so now we're just seeing this explosion of energy, and people are like, we don't know what to do with this.
It's too funny. Well, and it's so funny too, because like, okay, so for People's Awakening, that's one of the things I actually wrote. I think it's in my first book that I wrote, where I'm like, I didn't have any big like aha moment. Like there was no big, huge, awful thing, because a lot of people wake up through really bad, like some horrific accident or some really awful thing that happens in their life. So 2020 could have wakened a lot of people just because like they got stuck with no job and no way to do anything, and they had to like dig deep in their soul to even go forward. So I'm lucky I didn't have to wake up that way, but I know a lot of people probably are. And I know the last like year and a half, and especially last year, right before all of this stuff went down, right? Like, so right before all the shutdowns and all the craziness happened, my guides have been saying we have to get into heart and head congruency, meaning we have to live from our heart, which a lot of people still live in their head. We've got to get into the heart space to figure out what we really want, what we like, what we enjoy. Like, it's asking all of those questions, like, what do you really want? And then believing that you can actually do things to help create that. Because I think a lot of times we feel so much of a victim of life happens to me instead of life happens for me. And I remember how that used to make me so cranky when I would hear that. But I'm like, now that I'm on the other side of it, I'm like, oh my God, I see it. I know exactly. And now I see it. And I'm like, oh, I used to get so frustrated with people that would say it's happening for you instead of to you. But there's so much truth in it.
Yeah. Well, it depends on the situations, because there's no doubt that there are terrible things that happen to people. And the real sign of strength is when they're able to climb out from the bottom of whatever that was. And it's not until they climb out that it's really happened for them, where they've recognized
it's always on the way other side.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I know what you mean, because, I think that we've all been through situations in life where we're like, well, that was so unfair. And it's like, well, you're right. That was unfair, but it's still your responsibility. And that's the kicker. And so when you take responsibility for yourself and your life events that were unfair and weren't your fault, you realize how much more power you have. And that itself is just, it's empowering.
It's amazing.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I feel like we could talk about so many things. I just was checking the comments really quick. Somebody's saying that their 9-year-old also sees. I love working with the little kids. It's so much fun when they're like, oh my God, you see that too?
Yeah.
Yep, I see it too. I see it. And then somebody else said that they love the explanation of the intuition being like charades. And it is so true for a lot of people, because again, there's so many different kind of gifts, and everybody can. I always equate it to baseball. Like, you might really suck at baseball, but you could still play it, right? Like, and even if you couldn't really play, you could probably figure out how to do stats or, do something. There's some way that you could be involved in it. So, and we all have different callings. We all have different purposes. So it's just figuring out what your gift is. How do you see? Do you see like a movie? Do you see in pictures? Do you see like charades? Like, there's so many different ways for the gifts to come in. And I love, okay, so when we were talking, we were going to call this Embracing Heaven. So I just want to, let's just feel into that. I want you to tell me like kind of what that means.
Okay. So Embracing Heaven is an online course that I have designed that I'm actually still creating. So basically what happened was, a few years ago, I ended up getting an email from someone telling me that he wanted to connect with his grandmother, but he couldn't afford a reading with me. And he asked if I could show him how to do that on his own. And I've gotten requests like that before, but for some reason, this just like bam, hit me. Is like, wait a second, not only can I teach this kid how to do this, like I can teach everyone how to do this. And so I created a program that had only 3 videos in it, and it was really meant to be like a fast track to help you to connect. And so there was no fluff in it. There was no easing people into it. It was just like, okay, here's a brief explanation of clairs, and here's how you can connect with your loved ones. And I guide them through a meditation. And as time has gone on, obviously I've learned more about spirit communication, and I've learned that while it's nice to have a fast track for people who are ready, and for people who are saying, I feel like I sense my grandma, or I'm having dreams about my husband, those are the ones that can do more of a fast track course. But for other people who are still heavy in their grief, whether the grief is a year old or a day old, they need a little more structure. And for people who are taking a fast track approach, like the original session taught, what I find is that they'll do the meditation once or twice and then feel satisfied with it, and then they just kind of forget the experience and move on. So the new course, Embracing Heaven, really teaches you how to have a profound and lasting relationships with your loved ones on the other side. And so it's not just about you embracing them once and letting them go, which is what I think people are doing with my original Connect with Deceased Friends and Family course. It's about embracing heaven and holding on, because they're not leaving. They still care about you. They still want to be around you. And the trick right now, or really the challenge right now, is to simply fall in love with the new way of communicating and fall in love with the new dynamic, because so many times people get stuck in the grief of missing someone, and what they're really missing is the physical body and the physical sight, the physical touch, the physical hearing of their voice. And that's what they miss. If they understood their loved one was still there, right in front of them, it'd be different. And so I'm teaching them through the new upcoming course, which I've been working on for a while. I'm really hoping it'll be done in February, March at the latest. What I'm teaching them to do is to use all of their senses and to get into that meditative state, sure, because that's the easiest way to connect with all your senses. But you're really going to train yourself outside of the meditation too, so you can feel them, sense them, communicate with them during your waking hours just as easily as you could when they were still here. So you'll still feel their touch. You'll still hear their voice. It'll be different because it's intuitive, but it's still there.
Yeah. No, I love that. It's so good. And again, I love to give people resources like this, because again, I can work in the angelic realm or the upper realms, or even in the, getting into the galactic stuff.
Sure.
So much easier. Like talking baseball, mediumship is not my base. Like I can work with angels and stuff all day long, but people that have passed over is not my forte. Yeah. So it's really great to have so many different aspects. And I feel like there's so many different aspects to spirituality and understanding. Like, I love that you're calling it Embracing Heaven, because I think there's so much more to that, that we even realize, like, I feel like I've always said heaven is all around us. Like, that's the only way I can explain it, is heaven is all around us, and we just have to be open to experiencing it. So I love so much what you're doing, and I'm so glad that you were my guest today. I try to keep these kind of short. I don't really see any other. Let me just check comments one more time and see if there's any more questions. Yeah, somebody said they see pictures and a movie. Some people, so everybody hears all of the clairs. Like, you feel in a different way, you see in a different way, everything that's spiritual, you will experience based on your own way of learning, even, right? So like, some people are more visual learners, some people are more kinesthetic learners. Like, I feel like that actually translates, a lot of what we already know translates to spirituality, just on how you're gifted and how you do things, because we all do things differently.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and the other thing too is I have this exercise that I teach people, and like if you want to be more clairvoyant, then the interesting thing is you need to be using your physical eyes more and closing your eyes and recalling what's around you and recalling it in detail, because spirit works with the information that's already in our minds. And every once in a while they'll surprise you and they'll show you an image or they'll say a word you've never seen, you've never heard of, and you're like, I don't even know how to pronounce that. I don't even know how to describe what this foreign object is. And so what they'll do, in fact, Jen, going back to your example of, or your story of when you were at the esthetician and you were getting and you were getting that image of the locket, but it was like a pocket watch. Like that's the same thing. She was showing you a locket. And you're like, I've never seen a locket that big. That's a pocket watch.
Oh, right.
Yeah, but that's
Totally
why they work with the images on our brain, because sometimes what they're showing us and what they want to show us, we're not going to understand what it is. So if they can give us something that's like the thing they want to describe, and we can describe that thing that is like whatever they want to say, when we are explaining that to the client, like I see a silver round thing that looks like a pocket watch on a long chain, whatever it is. And they're like, oh my gosh, that's the locket, or that's this, or that's that. And we're like, okay, I never in a million years would have guessed that's what that was. So thank you. So yeah. So just if you're,
I have a really good question. So this is a mediumship thing, because again, I've only experienced the mediumship side of it. I mean, my own family comes in, but I recognize them, so it's easier to understand. But do you notice, and again, because this is not my forte, but do you notice that spirit also communicates in different ways? Because I never get names, but there was this one time that I did a reading and this guy came, I'm like, I'm trying to work with angels, and there's this guy, I said, there's some man here that wants to talk to you. And it was so funny because he put like an old fashioned, like back in the 50s where they had those big signs and like the lights went around it. Like he put his name on there, and I'm like, is this his name?
wow.
So spirit on the other side sometimes can also do that. And I'm like, I would have never in a million years, like I'll even tell people I can't get names, but like he showed me his name. I'm getting chills right now because it was so much fun, and it was something that I don't normally experience. But do you feel that spirit even will communicate in the way that they know how?
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And I
think that's why it's so important for us to, like, even though we have our clairs that are going to be the strongest, like there's one or two that's going to be stronger than the others. It's really important for us to develop all of them, because on the other side, they have different strengths too. Mm-hmm. So if you are more clairsentient, but your person on the other side is more clairvoyant or works better with visuals, that's going to be a challenge for both of you, because he can't work with your strongest clair. And if you're not developed with all your clairs, you're not going to get that visual aside. So it's really important that even if you think you suck at it, you still need to, develop even your weakest clairs, because they're still going to be valuable. So and we want to help spirit with the communication as much as possible. So yeah, always.
So I love how you just said work with your weakest. Whatever your weakest thing is. I literally just said this to a client a few days ago. She's like, "What? How do I do this?" And I'm like, this. Like, it's not sexy, but you have to do the basics. Like, you have to do the basics of all of the clairs, all of the spiritual gifts, whatever you want to call them. It's like a muscle. You have to work them out. And it's like, you can't skip leg day, right? Like if you want a balanced body, you can't skip leg day. So you've got to do all of the things and I think sometimes those of us that are intuitive, it's like, but I want to do that. Well, are you doing the exercises you need to do that? Oh, crap.
Yeah. Well, it's like meditating. People always, people usually don't want to meditate, and that's fine. It doesn't have to be a long meditation, but if you're not going to meditate, like I don't like doing sit-ups, so I'll do crunches or I'll do something else. And so you can find something that still works that same muscle. It doesn't have to be a sit-up, but it still has to work the abs. And so it's same thing with meditation. Fine, you don't like meditating, automatic writing, channeled writing, prayer.
Or active meditation even. Like I'll tell they're like, I can't meditate. And I'm like, have you ever been like on a treadmill and you zone out? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, then you just meditated.
Yeah.
Welcome to the meditation. You just did it. You just need to be active when you're doing it. So yeah, I love that so much. I'm my mind just went back to, God, it feels like forever ago, but I used to do a meditation class. And I remember I was like, no, one of my best times to meditate is, I had at my kitchen, there was a window and I could see out in the field behind us. And so my doing dishes, like we had a dishwasher, but I would do dishes by hand sometimes because it was a meditation. The water was warm, the bubbles were there. I could look outside and I would just kind of get lost in it. So that's people that say I can't meditate. I'm like, oh, you can meditate.
Right. Yeah.
You start labeling it with, with what you think it is. But well, okay. Thank you so much for being my guest. Any quick little wrap up before that you want to leave for a message for everybody? And you guys, I will make sure you have all of Nicole's information, how to find her, her YouTube, her Facebook, her website, all of that good stuff, so that you can get in her world and find all of her offers.
Yeah, so I just want to invite people to my psychic rehab over at YouTube. And just be sure that I offer so many free resources on YouTube and on Facebook. And one of my passions is truly helping you to develop as best as I can. And so it is through your questions and your comments that I'm able to gauge what type of information would be useful to you. And, sometimes I'll sit there and I'll channel the information on my own, or through my own experiences, I'll be able to develop an answer. But one of the things that I really love doing is researching. And so I think that's one of the things that makes me a little different from other mediums on YouTube is I get into I like the medical jargon. I like the research. I love data. It's ridiculous how much I love data. So if you're looking for a place where you can get involved with mediumship and you want to, develop on your own, that's a great place to start. And then, of course, if you are someone who's lost a loved one in your life, whether it was recently or years ago, please check out my online course, Connect with Deceased Friends and Family. If you sign up for that course, Connect with Deceased Friends and Family, you're going to find it's the old course. It's only 3 videos long, but I am working on the Embracing Heaven course, which comes with, I'm looking at it on my wall right now. It has 9 lessons on it and several videos, and that will be updated soon. So if you buy Connect with Deceased Friends and Family, you'll automatically be upgraded to Embracing Heaven when it comes out, which will hopefully be soon. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a great gift. So good. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I think we could probably talk about all kinds of different things forever, but we're going to wrap it up for today. So thank you everybody for being here. I appreciate y'all so much, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye, guys.